a random.
What does joining Hip Hop Now's Patreon mean? It means supporting the kind of hip-hop content that keeps you updated on the latest hip-hop news and moves. It means supporting the production of content like That Time in Hip Hop and Hip Hop Now Reviews. It means you care about the conversation and preservation of hip-hop music and culture. Hip Hop Now Patreon supporters get access to bonus content, merchandise, and more. Support the movement. Become a supporter of Hip Hop Now Podcast today at patreon.com/Hip Hop Now.
Coming up on this week's episode of Hip Hop Now Podcast, Gucci Mane and Jeezy face off in the second season premiere of Verzuz. Speaking of Jeezy, Jeezy disses 50 Cent and Freddie Gibbs on his brand new album. And I'm just going to say this, and I'm going to say it once. We need to give Statik Selektah his flowers. I'll explain.
Let's get right to the business.
Read these headlines. This album must be gone. This album must be gone.
Classic album.
Come to Hip Hop Podcast. What up, y'all? I am your host, Vegas, and this is Hip Hop Now Podcast, a podcast designed to catch you up on all things hip-hop, music, and culture that go down during the week. Big shout out to the producers of this very podcast, that is, the people that support on patreon.com/Hip Hop Now. And if you would like to become a producer of this podcast to get exclusive access to bonus episodes, whether that be timed exclusives or exclusives. That means other people will never hear it besides the producers. Bars. All you got to do is become a part of the team. If you visit the site, you can see the different tiers. You can be a one-time supporter or you can be a monthly supporter. Whatever it is you can do to support this podcast financially is appreciated. Trust me, I understand what's going on. The expectation is not for homie who lost his job, homie who's struggling, but young lady who's struggling, whatever, who enjoys this podcast to have to give me money in order to produce content. That is not the case. What we are doing here is basically pumping up something we all love. I love to do it. You love to listen to it, so let's make it grow. Also, there's merchandise available if that's another way you want to support. So you may not be able to swing a monthly support situation, but maybe you say, hey, I could cop that cup or I could cop that t-shirt, various colors and all of it, even phone cases to even laptop cases, everything, mask. But again, make sure you read everything in regards to the mask. But all of the links to the merchandise and the Patreon will be in the description of this episode, just like every episode. So if you want to become a producer, visit patreon.com/Hip Hop Now. And if you want to just support by rocking some swag and giving a one-time donation, please do so. And if you choose to buy a t-shirt or whatever it may be, don't forget to take a photo and tag me on Twitter and Instagram at VegasWorldINC. Couple of things of business real quick. I know you thought I was going to say what I usually say, but I'm not going to say it. Couple of things real quick, right? So we are getting really close to the best of the year. Next month, I'm going to be doing my best of the year, my top 5 of the year, what I do every year. Obviously, there will be some honorable mentions, but I'm only going to break those down to 5. But if you're a person who maybe you heard about 1 or 2 albums and you kind of want to know what else was good this year, because maybe you just want to go through and really only check out the stuff that was good, the Patreon supporters, the producers of this podcast, have already gotten an episode where I talk about every album that is worth your time in 2020. Now, that is a timed exclusive, for obvious reasons, because next week is a holiday and I'm going to enjoy that holiday. So I'm going to release that episode so that everyone can hear it. But keep in mind, my top 5 of 2020 is coming next month. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be good. It's going to be crazy. And if you want to know a preview, no, I have no idea. I have no idea. I probably have like 20 albums at this point that could all be or all make a case to be in my top 5. So I got it. I got some homework to do. Big shout out to allhiphop.com, hiphopdx.com, djbooth.net, and a couple of places where I'm getting some of these stories. Frizzum. So Jeezy just recently put out an album this Friday. If you're from the future, you know what to do. You need to get your ass out of here. But the Recession 2 is the album, kind of like a pro-black album, hence the cover. I think some people, Gucci Mane, didn't understand why he was dressed the way he was dressed on the cover. He was kind of dressed like the Black Panthers. The theme, there was a theme there, but there's a theme throughout the album. Obviously, with everything that was going on in 2020, as far as social justice, trust me, that's not a 2020 thing. Social justice is something that's been needed since during and after slavery, okay? It's been there, but I'm not going to preach. The bottom line is Jeezy put out a brand new album, The Recession 2, but the album was led by a single called Therapy for My Soul, in which in the lyrics he disses 50 Cent and Freddie Gibbs. Let's read a couple of quotes from there. If 1-5 wasn't my dog, I would have touched him. When that shit went down with Gibbs, I couldn't trust him. Invested my hard-earned money, tied up my bread, but he gonna try and tell you I'm flawed. That's in his head. It's just, it's happening just the way that I said it. Good on your own, and if I'm honest, nothing gangsta about you. Leave this alone. So right there, he mentioned something about 50. You want to know what 50's reaction was? 50 said he's whack. End of story. End of that battle. But Freddie Gibbs, and if you listen to this podcast, Freddie Gibbs has put out a number of projects, including a project this year, and Alfredo with him and Alchemist, that have always been in my best of the year discussion a couple of years, maybe 2, maybe 3, but 2 for sure, that were in my top 5 of the year. So my admiration for him as a lyricist, as an artist, is extremely high because I feel like he's extremely underrated and in a lot of cases extremely slept on. But he has a major, major flaw. He is super sensitive. And when I say super sensitive, a lot of rappers are sensitive, right? I mean super sensitive in the sense that if he gets wind of somebody saying something about him, doesn't matter their status, DJ Academics, or if it's Jeezy, he is quick to Twitter fingers. Now, I'm not discussing whether people would do whatever on the street. Hopefully it doesn't get to that because at the end of the day, there's 2 rappers we talking about. At the end of the day, that's what this is. We're not talking about 2 gangsters because if you were full-time gangsters, you would just be full-time gangsters. You wouldn't be rapping about it, right? You'd be too busy getting money and being a gangster. And some people may feel you could do both, but I disagree. But this whole thing with Freddie Gibbs kind of stems from Freddie Gibbs saying how Jeezy just not hot anymore. Like he's trash, basically. And I reported this back, I believe, in June when Freddie Gibbs first said this. So this is Jeezy responding to him and speaking to their situation because there was a situation there with them as far as artists and deals and stuff like that that obviously did not work out. That was Jeezy's side of it. But the thing with Freddie Gibbs, though, is he's just too eager. He's one of them cats that you find like in all the comment sections of a certain content. Let's just say that, whether it's hip hop or a specific, artist's comment section. He's like one of those dudes, right? That's always showing up. That can't wait for somebody to get into it with him so he can go back and forth all day typing everything with emojis. Like, come on, Freddie Gibbs, your music is too dope. And I agree with Freddie Gibbs, right? He's to me, Freddie Gibbs been better than Jeezy, in my opinion. I'm not the biggest Jeezy fan, but there are songs, and obviously there's a couple of albums I do like also. Probably more recent than older albums. But most people who I hear say they like them, they say they like the ad libs. And I'm like, word? You bought his whole album for ad libs? Now I'm not taking sides here. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. When we talking bar for bar, work for work, Freddie Gibbs is way more layered than Jeezy. And I understood what he was saying at the moment as far as people ain't really checking for Jeezy no more. Not like they used to. But I think he owes Jeezy a chance to respond to something like that, right? Like, it doesn't have to be a battle. It doesn't have to be beef. You said something to him. He's a man. I'm talking about Jeezy. And he should be able to respond, right? And I felt like his response was light, right? It said, you said one thing and his response said another. End of story. But no, Freddie Gibbs just went on Twitter and Instagram and just went in stuff like, I can't beef with this N-word. You got it, Snow. You won. Because it was a video like Jeezy dancing in the supermarket. BMF puts you in a headlock in front of me. You got to come harder than this, Snowflake. But the one that really, 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 really got me, which leads into our next story because I don't want to spend a lot of time, but this has kind of been the big stuff this week. He said, that man killed your partner, and now you doing a versus with him. And if you don't know what he's talking about, he is talking about season 2 of Verzuz, put together by Swiss Beats and Timbaland. You heard about it. It's all the rage, all the hip hop rage, right? The premiere basically episode of it is Jeezy versus Gucci Mane. And if you know their long-standing beef, I'ma just summarize it, right? They used to be cool. Then they had beef. Word on the street is Jeezy put a hit on Gucci Mane. Somebody went to collect on that hit. Gucci Mane killed that guy. That guy happened to be a friend also of Jeezy. Gucci Mane made a song about it. One of the most famous lines in that record in my podcast, That Time for Hip Hop, me and Tone talked about it, but saying go dig your partner up, ask him, he won't say ish. Really disrespectful line for the deceased. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, wait a minute, he killed him. I mean, what after that? Why he in jail? Well, because it was considered to be self-defense. So, there you have it. And the fact that Freddie Gibbs would use that is kind of like, come on, man, just put another album out. Why are you even worried about somebody who you says is not that good? But let's talk about the verses real quick. So, if you listen to this podcast, you know I do not watch. I'm not boycotting anything. I'm not trying to be smarter than anybody else by saying, yeah, I don't need to watch because I got all the records. This is something that I've done or felt for years. I'm a big music fan, right? I like what I like. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Jeezy, but I have the Jeezy songs that I do like. Not the biggest fan of Gucci Mane, but I have the songs I do like and the mixtapes I do like. So, me watching the verses of them playing a lot of the records, I kind of know just wasn't a big deal. And it's not just them. The only verses I've watched is RZA versus DJ Premier, and that was partly in due to the fact that I appeared on the Homie Kills podcast, Apartment 5B, where we talked about who was better. So I kind of wanted to watch not only to see the battle, but to kind of see what this versus thing was all about. And, I saw what I saw and that was it. And the thing is like with this Jeezy and Gucci Mane thing is sometimes you don't have to watch because you kind of get the play-by-play by just watching social media, either as it's happening or the day after when clips and videos are thrown on your timeline. So you really don't miss anything unless, you see what you see and you want to go see it. Now, from what I hear and some of what I've seen, it was really a personal situation. Again, one guy put a hit on another. The other guy killed the guy who came to collect, and that person who came to collect just happened to be the friend of the other guy. So this is an intense situation. Worse than that, Gucci Mane performed the record where he talks about killing Jeezy's man. But in the end, they did show after an intense, versus, more intense than any of these other verses been, that's for sure. They performed a song they got together called So Icy. So it was all love in the end. And from what I hear from a lot of people, it was mostly on the side of Jeezy. So there you have it. If you kind of wanted to know but didn't really want to watch or don't know who these two cats are and wanted to know what the story was, what all the fuss was about, there you go. I just laid it out from Jeezy's album to Freddie Gibbs, 50 Cent, Gucci Mane, all of it. Let's move on. Speaking of verses, 50 Cent said he would be down for a battle with Game, but there's one condition. Now, this article is on hiphopdx.com, but it's basically pulled from an interview in Los Angeles on 92.3 with the host Big Boy. And here's what 50 had to say in regards to a potential versus face-off. Maybe Game. Okay, look, he can't play no records with my voice on them. As much as we argued and fought in the early stages, I would rather see him benefit from the momentum than someone else. He'll still be a part of G Unit and is going to be a part of the legacy overall, even if you just want to concentrate on the breakup. So after the whole Jeezy and Gucci Mane situation probably being the most tense you can possibly get, as far as a versus, I think Game and 50 Cent is more doable. I think 50 Cent and Ja Rule is dangerous. Because I don't know, it's one thing that I left out from the whole, Gucci Mane and Jeezy thing is that Gucci Mane was constantly making it a rough situation to be in, whereas Jeezy kept taking the high road, right? I don't know if Ja Rule and 50 Cent can do that. They were, in these cases, 50 feels like Gucci Mane, right? People tried to kill me. But Ja Rule, in a lot of respects, and he may say different, but we all know, he's kind of lost his rap career as a result of 50 Cent. It's just clear. It's clear as day. So he can say what he wants about feeling some kind of way and blah, 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 but they will never, I won't say never, but I don't see any growth in them as individuals, as if you've haven't already listened to this podcast before, they stay bickering and going back and forth online. It's almost impossible for them to be in the same space and it not go down. And even if it's not 50 and Ja Rule all of a sudden fighting each other, I can't see their crews being in the same room and feeling like, well, I don't have nothing to lose. And and it just being bad. And that'll be bad for business, for Swiss Beats, for Verzuz, for Ciroc, for Revolt, for Apple Music. Like, they need to be extremely careful with who they match up. Because one thing, and this is turned into a Verzuz episode, but let's talk about it, right? One thing that's for certain about Verzuz is there's a theme with every Verzuz that they do, right? It's not just the theme of who they are, but there's a theme that surrounds that. Like DMX and Snoop doing a Verzuz, it was about the dog. These two iconic dogs in hip hop. Whereas, you had DJ Premier and RZA, and it was about boom bap in 90s in a certain level. And then you had Beanie Man and Buju, who had beef in the past as well. And it's about the rivalry between those two, the number of hits they both have. But what's great about it is the celebration. Because that's the thing that's the Verzuz is all about, the celebration of music. So you tell me, when I say it's about the celebration of both their music, can you really see 50 being up there without taking jabs at Ja Rule and his music? You hear what he just said, the game. The stipulation is you can't play any music with my voice on it. That's some of Game's biggest hits, even though Game got a ton of fire that a lot of people don't know about. That wasn't on that first album, that was on later albums and don't feature 50, but I don't know if they're big enough hits to compete with 50. He would need some of those original joints. Statik Selektah has a brand new album coming out called The Balancing Act. It's 16 tracks. It features special guests such as Nas, Joey Badass, Killer Mike, Black Thought, The Roots, Conway the Machine, Method Man, 2 Chainz, Benny the Butcher, Havoc, Dave East. Yeah, the roster is pretty stacked. The album is supposed to release on Black Friday. It's 16 tracks deep. But more than, and obviously I'm going to check it out, listen for myself. I mean, could be another candidate for album of the year or top 5 of the year, not album of the year, because we're not doing that. We're doing top 5 of the year. But I just want to say this about Statik Selektah, right? I want to tell you a little story, because this is the thing about this week in hip hop news. There hasn't been a ton of it. And this could have very well just been an episode that was solely about Verzuz in general. Like, let's talk about Verzuz. But it's not. Let's talk about Statik Selektah real quick. New compilation coming out, right? Balancing Act, Black Friday, November 27th. I was listening to K Slay's new album compilation. It's short. It's like 6 tracks. I think it's called Homage. I believe that's the name of it. And the first song literally had a good 10 MCs on it, I believe. Not bums, though. Heavy hitters. Benny the Butcher's on there. AZ. The Locks. I believe Joel Ortiz was on there. A lot of people were on it. And I instantly wanted to turn it off once it hit like the 4 to 5 minute mark. Because this song had so many MCs on it, it was 11 minutes, and it was the first record. Now, granted, there was a purpose, a theme behind it, so I get it. Homage. It's a hip hop joint. Put that beat on, let MCs just spit 11 minutes of just straight fire, and everybody got bars on it. So you would think that would be something I love, something you would love. But at the same time, I was kind of like, Statik Selektah doesn't do this. Now, this isn't a Statik Selektah versus DJ K Slay thing. But when you think about DJ compilations, right, they don't happen as much as they used to. And let me not say that. They're not as popular as they used to be when it was Funk Master Flex and, like with the Tunnel joint and his other, what is it, 90 Minutes of Funk or whatever, DJ Clue. Like, DJs were huge in the late 90s to early 2000s to the point they had these album compilations. K Slay being one of them. But K Slay had this thing about his compilations that always made me, I don't know, feel like I'm being overloaded with raps. And some people would be like, yo, that's stupid, son. If you're a fan of, if you love hip hop, you love that. No, man. Like, it almost felt senseless. You know what I'm saying? You ever heard somebody just rhyme for like 90 minutes and it's really dope? For like 5 minutes, maybe, then that's being generous. And of course, 90 minutes, you're not rhyming that long. But the point is you start to lose interest. And K Slay has done this throughout his albums where he'll have compilation albums that got a bunch of dudes that you never heard before. And there's nothing wrong with that. But then when you press play, none of them are really interesting. They just are good at rhyming and, and they now on. So it's a way to showcase them. He's had numerous compilations where it was like a ton of MCs, maybe too many MCs, maybe the wrong combination of MCs on a track. And it just always was a turnoff for me. And I always felt weird because I always felt like, man, but this is something I should love, right? Like K Slay is like the quintessential New York DJ who loves hip hop. You know what I'm saying? Will scream out, yo, the hip hop drama king. Like, it should be right up my alley. But it becomes boring. But if you take those same crop of MCs and you put them on a Statik Selektah compilation, well, the pairings of the MCs are so well thought out. Sometimes I think they're not going to be good, and sometimes they're great. And they make sense. And you could tell there's like a theme going on with these records and who he chose to have on each song. It's not 20 dudes on an 11-minute track just because it's bars in hip hop. It just becomes boring. And the prime example is with that same record. By the time I reach about 4 minutes in, I had forgot who was on the track earlier. And then I couldn't even recognize any of the voices after a while because I was like, wow, it's still on. It's still going. The reason why I say give Statik Selektah his flowers today is because I think he's been consistent at doing the DJ compilation the right way. DJ, producer, whatever you want to call it. He's, as far as boom bap goes, I know other people make it like DJ Mustard and stuff like that. I'm talking about boom bap. Statik Selektah is the prime example of it being done the right way in 2020. Just go check out his past work. Look at the artists are varied. You know what I'm saying? He'll have a track like his one joint. I can't remember the name of the song or the album, but it's this song that I love, and it features Wale and Bun B. And that beat and their flows and what they saying works. They almost sound like a group. That's how you make it work. Every track can be my turn, your turn, his turn, her turn, their turn, and then we 20 minutes into one record. It just can't be that. But I'm not necessarily knocking it because somebody likes it, right? He wouldn't do it if it was something that somebody didn't like. But I can't, especially in this age of getting a million albums from a million people, especially Griselda Records, who put out numerous projects. I can't imagine that K Slade album getting a lot of burn because there's so much out that's so much better produced, whether it's the production and as a project. It's not like K Slade was making radio friendly compilations prior to this, and this is him coming back to that boom bap, That would make more sense. Yeah, just make a crazy posse cut and put everybody on it. Posse cuts shouldn't have no more than 5 to 6 people. Because after a while, somebody's verse is getting forgot. Somebody's, especially depending on how dope all the other verses are. So, shout out to Statik Selektah. Obviously, I'm going to check out his album when it drops. Sorry, K Slade. I tried, but Statik Selektah just has the formula for what a DJ/producer compilation should be. The lead single got Joey Badass and Nas on it. What more can I say? It's great. Big rest in peace and happy birthday to the late, great Phife Dawg, who would have been 50 on November 20th. Phife Dawg, if you don't know, not everybody is a hip-hop historian. Maybe somebody listening to this joint just got put on to hip-hop. But Phife Dawg is one of the members of the legendary group, arguably the greatest group of all time, arguably, operative word right there, of all time, A Tribe Called Quest. Man, it's still weird to even know that he's gone. But unfortunately, that's kind of how life is, right? You know what I'm saying? We don't get to choose when we go or how we go, what age, All we can do is try to do the best we can do with the time we currently have. Happy birthday, Phife. That's going to do it for me for this week. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at VegasWorldINC. And please know that this podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. So if you don't see it, all you got to do is hit the search icon and type in the words Hip Hop Now Podcast. Hit that subscribe button and stay locked in. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please drop a review. The more reviews, the merrier. There are plenty of people who listen all the time, whether it's Spotify or whatever. But definitely, if you are using an Apple device, an Apple Podcast to listen, it only takes a small bit of your time to leave a review. Don't forget, next week, we are going to drop for the masses my 2020 best albums of the year. So far, we still got a little bit of time for something crazy to drop. But so far, for everybody to hear as I take a break next week. So definitely stay tuned for that. Get some hip-hop in your mind. See what I think about a couple of albums I haven't reviewed. Maybe I'll review them. You never know. But until next time, y'all, I am not a critic. I'm a fan. Peace.
Drop it on the random.